Well, Mother Nature has decided to cooperate. Blaze Media senior politics editor Chris Bedford, he went from Capitol Hill last night. He was there in attendance for Trump's speech, and he has made it here to our studios in Dallas to tell us all about it. So we're so happy that you made it here.
Me too. There's a whole storm system all in between us. And we had to part that, bang my staff down and call on the Lord. And we finally made it. Finally.
You did. So what was it like last night? Just give me a sense of what it was like to be in there last night with Trump's historic speech.
Well, the first thing you notice when you go through past all the security, and there's security everywhere, is just how short most senators are. I mean, that's kind of the classic D.C. thing. I bumped into one Democrat who wasn't up to my chest. I was accidentally in the Senate elevator. They have different elevators. There's senators only at different times, and I got into that because I was in a rush, too, to get through that security. And there's all these just staff running around, politicians, people you recognize, Ted Cruz going by with an entire entourage, Elizabeth Warren going by with an entire... She looked at me like I was the devil when I came up and asked her a question, because it had been incorrectly reported earlier in the day that she would not be in attendance, but apparently that was not true, and she was there looking all Elizabeth Warren-y, my old senator from Massachusetts. But these are solid buildings. These are marble, stone, the kind of floor that Mitch McConnell does not want to slip on. It is. No one wants to slip on this stuff. It's hard. And they were shaking you could hear, because there was always a little bit of a lag, whether it was at first the disruption, the boos, the yelling, the stomping, the applause. It's kind of like being in a stadium. It's kind of like being near the fireworks. You can actually feel it in your body. And it's a rush. And then to see everyone... There's a lot of partisanship there. There's a lot of foreign media there. There's a lot of people who are excited, a lot of people who are very, very, very sad at the occasion, which I like. I think I like that part the most. And it's an exciting place to be reporting for The Blaze.
Well, it's so cool to have you there and to have you as the White House correspondent, and you are in the press pool. So things are happening. Things are changing in the media landscape, and you're the guy that gets to do it.
So I'm trying to hire right now, if you know anyone, a White House correspondent, because this job, and let me sell it to you.
Yeah, please do.
Basically hanging out all day in an airport lobby that's like kind of muggy with all of the worst people you can possibly imagine, and a couple of really nice, actually, like the people who do the cameras are great. And you're just waiting. It's like you have a mechanical issue. Oh, the president might do something in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. You can't go beyond security. So help you God, if you leave this area, you might get tagged by TSA. It's basically like that every day. But for those brief moments, when you're actually there with the president, you're asking questions, you're talking to Elon Musk, it is pretty cool.
So what is the takeaway from the speech last night, right? This is historic. We're going to be looking back at this speech like we do many of his others. What are we going to remember the most about this one?
Well, unfortunately, I think one aspect they're going to remember the most about this is the Democrats. And that's been talked about ad nauseum, but they really made fools of themselves. And the D.C. press is extremely partisan in their favor. They love them. They'll do anything for them, and they were embarrassed. They thought it was a spectacle. And, there's a lot of people who are watching the State of the Union. One friend texted me and said, "Who's that next to the vice president?" Well, that's the Speaker of the House. There's a lot of people who actually aren't particularly engaged. They don't know why the old man's waving his cane and screaming like he's lost in a park somewhere. He's escaped the nursing home. They don't understand what all these signs are, and they can't get their minds around what you and Rebecca were just talking about, people not standing. But from a historical point of view, besides the Democrats just going further into the abyss and the congressional Democrats becoming further separated from the gubernatorial Democrats, who are much more serious in general because they're actually governors, not just little teenage activists, is President Trump's evolution. I wrote about this in the Beltway Brief this morning, but what started out as someone who we knew could be a businessman and an author, or at least a approver of ghostwritten scripts, we knew he could be an entertainer. We knew he knew television. We knew he knew comedy. And there was a question in 2016 of can he be a politician? Now, reporters were seriously talking about he's not gonna kiss babies. He's not gonna hug people. He's a germaphobe. He can't be around folks. He doesn't know how to interact with the daily people. And I think the first hint I got that this was incorrect was seeing him in Iowa, where one, he was himself. Most politicians play dress up. So if you're with a middle class crowd, you wear a suit and tie. And if you're with The working class, you take off your tie and your jacket and you roll up your sleeves.
If you're Hillary Clinton, you put hot sauce in your bag.
Yes, exactly. I actually have it on my keychain.
And you get an accent for whatever city you're in at that point in time. Just in case.
And I noticed that if you're like with the rich people, you take off your tie and jacket as well, but you put on a campaign vest because rich people wear vests, I guess. Donald Trump doesn't do any of that. He just wears a brownie suit and his trucker cap, and he's comfortable anywhere, and he's comfortable in his own skin. And people can feel that. But really, I didn't even write about this part in my article, but you can find out about it in The Art of the Donald, a book I wrote about the whole thing, is that I was talking to the makeup women who the cameras aren't on when you're behind that curtain. It's like little cramped rooms before sets and debates. They're working for you. You'll see a lot of jerks in this industry. It could be disrespectful or rude. So I asked them, who was the biggest jerk? And everyone was kind of quiet for a second. And then one woman whispered, Marco Rubio, which was really surprising because he's such a nice guy in public. I don't know, maybe he was having a bad day that day. And I said, well, who was the nicest person? And they said Donald Trump. Every one of them. Everyone. He was just shaking hands, greeting people. And as I saw him in person that night at a dinner, and then I saw him the next morning at breakfast, the way he interacted with people showed that he was an incredible politician. Now, this is all in the past. So let's fast forward. Through that first 4 years, the biggest complaint you heard about him was he was not always presidential. Mm-hmm. And you'd hear this from bikers with Trump tattoos. They would say, hey, could you tell him to tone down the tweets a little bit? Right. It's just a bit much. I always thought they were funny, but some people didn't. And even when he had these moments of soaring rhetoric, like in his speech at Normandy, maybe it would be followed up with tweeting at Mika a few hours later. He would still go back and forth. And from that time, from his last speech 5 years before last night, when he talked to members of Congress in the chambers for his final State of the Union, before COVID hit, before a large land war hit Europe again, back when the economy was good, back when people were feeling good, but also back when he was an embattled politician considered to be an usurper by much of the global order, who wasn't supposed to be there, who was going through an impeachment of his own at the time over Ukraine. To fast forward to now, where he is one of the most credible statesmen on the global stage. He's someone who's iconic. The assassination attempt will be a famous image for a century to come. It's wild to see something like that. He has gravitas. He doesn't fly off the handle quite as easily. Even his ribbing of the Democrats, which was there, you girls were just talking about it, was more good-natured teasing. Mm-hmm. He called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas.
It was fun
funny
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And he moved seamlessly between that humor and serious stuff. And he didn't introduce a lot of new things. There wasn't that many surprises except for some of the guests. But he established an agenda that has now been 9 years in the making, 10 years in the making today of what MAGA stands for, what they've accomplished, what they're doing. And if you want any kind of an idea of what is unifying in America in an age where people fight over the NFL and Disney, 76 approval rating in a YouGov CBS poll, I know that was a bit of an outlier, is a sign of this is what the American people want to hear. And he's become a great orator and, dare I say, potentially someone who's more unifying.
Politics is all about the approval numbers, right? Is this what the people want? We didn't have the Trump mandate back in 2016. They weren't ready for that at that point in time. The people weren't there yet. Even people on the right were still trying to figure out, who is this guy? Is this really a Republican? Is he not? Is he a New York liberal? What are we going to get from this man as president? And then you do fast forward now into his second term, and his approval numbers are better, which in politics is almost unheard of, to go through and actually do better the longer that you're on the national stage.
Usually we get sick of you.
We usually get very sick. We're tired of you. We want somebody new, right? Like if you talk about the Bushes, if you talk about the Clintons, we're like, please, can we just move on from these people? We're sick and tired of it. And yet with Donald Trump, it's as good as ever.
It's such an entertainer
than ever.
I mean, he's someone who doesn't do the poll-tested stuff as much. He knows it instinctually. And you saw this in his television career. He doesn't sit there and watch C-SPAN and the Sunday morning shows like the politicians do. He watches things that other people watch. He takes the beast around NASCAR. He goes to these football games. Remember, when he came on the stage, politicians still talked to each other they didn't want to point, so they would use their thumb. to point because that was poll tested. It was non-threatening to people. Immigration was an act of love. Illegal immigration was an act of love, according to Jeb Bush. These were strange people, and he came in there like a WWE wrestler, just whipping chairs back and forth, calling Rand Paul a nerd, and making fun of Ted Cruz maybe a little too personally, suggesting maybe that his dad was involved in the Kennedy assassination. They were such a completely different level of barroom brawl politics. I remember during when he got the nomination, that it was the night before the convention started. I was at this kind of strange Mad Hatter's dinner with Tucker Carlson, Roger Stone, Alex Jones. It was like 6 of us there. It was like
the dinner.
Craziest group of people, and some poor reporter from NPR who was just so out of her depth the whole time, or The Hill, excuse me. And Roger Stone said, "We have a plan." I was like, "Oh, what's the plan?" He said, "We're going to call Bill Clinton a rapist." And Alex Jones was like, "Tell him about the plan." And the next morning, I was walking to the convention, and they are, truth to be told, out front of the convention with a megaphone, giving out T-shirts that say Bill Clinton's a rapist. And I was like, this is a new, crazy, insane era of politics. So it's just up in your face, out front. And Donald Trump has kind of led that. And you know what? Turns out the American people who did like watching the game shows, who did like watching some Jerry Springer, who like UFC, like these other things, were really sick of the politics, the lying, the people not listening to them, the poll-tested milquetoast that wasn't fixing anything, the uniparty. And Donald Trump's also kind of changed the parties. The parties are dead in some way. They're defined by the last person who was in the presidency. And this is probably true going back to Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and the parties. But it was the party of Reagan until it was the party of Bush. And then from there, it was kind of lost in the wilderness. What's the connection between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump? It's like almost nothing. How could these people possibly be in the same political party, which I think Romney used to ask himself quite a bit. And now it's become finally the party of Trump. And with the right people in the wings, because he didn't do this alone. Elon Musk's there, Tucker Carlson's there, all these the comedians are there, Shane Gillis is there, pushing this sort of cultural revolution. The courage is contagious, the party's redefined, and it turns out it's popular with the American people.
So if you go from 2016 Trump to present-day Trump, we do see this different skill set and a different attitude overall from Donald Trump. How does he get there, right? Is it more than just my life was saved on July 13th? What else contributes to this?
I think he kind of probably went through some of the stages of grief after he lost. We saw the rage. And he was raging. I know people who were in the room with him. He was turning off televisions. He was cloistered up in the Oval Office. Eventually, he was only watching shows that really just parroted back what he thought. He was so mad. And I kind of get it because the entire planet had turned on him, whether it's sports or Hollywood or the elites or the finance and Wall Street, his own backers, his own Congress, his own vice president. He felt completely betrayed and alone. And he went back to Mar-a-Lago, and he went back to his family, and he went back to his friends. And Biden started to just self-emulate on the stage, on the world stage, just completely fall apart. The country was doing terribly. Donald Trump was selling golden sneakers. He started to get his mojo back. He started to get that confidence back. And then he just came in, and he swept through. At the same time, smart people were working really hard to make it happen. I think that you can't go through that kind of a world embarrassment without getting a little bit of humility. But I truly think, having seen him a little while before and a little while after the gunshots, that actually had a real serious impact on him. In a way, it made him rethink everything. Like Donald Trump finally had maybe a midlife crisis or something that most normal people...
He finally had a midlife crisis.
Wouldn't that be great if we get Donald Trump into his 160s?
He could get Social Security. It's already going.
I know, right?
160 years old.
Everywhere he approaches, he's almost in legacy mode in some ways. We've talked about this, the way he's shares the stage with Elon Musk, the way he's buddy-buddy with J.D. Vance. I also don't think he's really used to having a White House that, one, at D.C. he understands and is now a political animal in, and two, people around him who love him and support him and want his agenda to succeed in a way that the previous Republicans were just trying to do Bush stuff under Trump's name. This is a new thing for him. It's a whole new environment, and it chilled him out.